up. Feel like something in my soul's just raising up. I got a bounce in my step and I'm hanging up. New persona, I'm hotter than Arizona. My aura corona, and I'll be sicker than pneumonia.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, and today I've got a Lifegain deck for you on a reasonable budget that can actually win games. I know, sounds crazy, but it's true. Here's mono white Lifegain. Yeah, I know, Lifegain isn't usually the deck that you want to be playing like ever, but right now I think it's like the best time in years to play a Lifegaining deck. We've got some really strong cards in the format right now that gain life, and the deck is really good against Ramunap Red, which is a scourge at mini and F&M, and it's pretty good in the energy matchup where it's got a lot of really good cards it can finish with. So, without further ado, let's check out the list. Well, it all starts with 4 copies of Legion's Landing. Speaking of really strong cards in this format that gain us life, LL Ween is way up there. It's an awesome card. First of all, just getting like a 1-mana 1/1 lifelink dude, like the little bloodsucker that comes with it, is not bad. And we've got a lot of creatures in this deck, so transforming it's super easy. And once you do transform it, it's ramp. First of all, that's pretty good. And it also functions as a never-ending creature factory that lets you like block dudes and extend the game, or just develop your board against control. Like literally everything about landing is awesome. But that's not all of our 1-mana 1/1 lifelinkers. We're also going to run a whole playset of Sacred Cats too. How's that sound? Juliet to kitty. But this card is actually really good, all cat jokes aside, and you can make cat jokes all day. But this actually popped up in a bunch of lists that have top-8'd over the past few months. Like, Sacred Cat is very much the real deal, you know, at least chump block. Bye, Julie, I'm sorry. I'm paying attention to another kitty. But it chump blocks at least twice for you, gains you a little bit of life, again extends the game, and the dreaded 3-cat start is something that no deck wants to come up against. She came back to me. That's kind of cool. But anyway, there's also the dreaded 2 cats in a Legion's Landing start that most decks don't want to see if you want to flip your landing really, really fast, too. There's just so much that cat can do. It's way more than it looks like. Now, we're going to play a couple of 2-drops in the deck that are polar opposites to one another. They fill completely different roles. We're going to play 4 copies of Glorybound Initiate and 4 copies of Bishop Soldier. Now, Glorybound is really offensive, you know. You can trade in combat when they swing in, you know. 3-power 2-drop is not bad if you're looking to trade, but for the most part, the real appeal here is swinging in for 4 with lifelink, even if you have to exert it. That's a pretty good deal for just your 2 mana. It's really, really aggressive in the right situations. But Bishop Soldier is really defensive. You know, there are going to be boards that you can swing in freely with it and get 2 damage, gain 2 life. That's cool when that happens. But really, if it trades in combat and gains you 2 life, it's done its job. Moving into the 3-drops, we're going to play 3 copies of Sunscourge Champion in the deck. This thing is actually super good. Get yourself a 2/3 body that'll usually block. But when it comes back, you get 4 life and a 4/4 body. That's awesome, especially if you've gotten the kind of board position a little bit later in the game where you can just like eternalize and start swinging in for 4 damage. That's awesome. And it can help you restabilize too that late in the game. And you can like trade lands and stuff that you draw dead late on in the game that you don't really need to get it back out of your graveyard. Same thing with like Sacred Cat. You can always discard a Sacred Cat to eternalize your Sunscourge Champion and then just embalm your Sacred Cat. That's a pretty hot tip if you want it. But in any case, Sunscourge Champion is usually worth at least 6 life over a game, and it's basically 6 power over a game too. It's just a really decent card that functions both defensively and in some cases offensively. We're going to play 3 copies of Aethersphere Harvester in the deck. If you don't have quite the money to play Aethersphere, you could always play Aerial Responder, and I wouldn't be mad, but Aethersphere is, in many ways, the better card. Now, we can crew this super easily with like a Legion's Landing token or a Sacred Cat, you know. It's very, very easy to get this thing swinging in, and 3 flying damage adds up super quick, and it's another resilient piece, you know. If we get swept or whatever, or they only have sorcery speed removal, then Aethersphere is going to be active pretty much all game. Well, it took getting to the 4-drop creatures to finally hit something that doesn't gain us life. We're just going to play 1 copy of Oketra the True in the deck. Now, with all these creatures in the deck, it's super easy to get Kiki attacking and blocking and stuff, you know, sticking and moving. Just really, really good, whether on defense or on offense. One of our best answers to a Bristling Hydra, you know. We're pretty good in the energy match. It feels about 50-50 in the energy match, but Bristling Hydra's really good against us. But Oketra gives us a main deck, more or less, answer to Hydra in most situations, you know. And she can make her own army. She can also help us recover from a sweeper, just like Aethersphere can, you know. Just so much good about Oketra. We're going to pack at least 1 copy in the main and then another in the board. Now, there are a lot of 5-mana options that white could play in this slot. But what we've gone with in the main deck is Crested Sunmare, not only because it's easily the most fun of all of our options, like definitely, but also because it's another really good finish in the energy match. You know, if you get a turn or two with the horse, then you can do a lot of damage. You can like develop your board a lot better than they can. You know, they don't really have a whole lot of answers to a 5/5 horse, especially once they start becoming indestructible. You know, like Harness Lightning can kill your original horse, your Sunmare, but they have to spend a lot of energy on it, you know. Aside from that, they don't really have a ton of options for dealing with it. Like, not even Glorybringer can really touch the Sunmare. So if you've got a few turns with it, and chances are you will get a few turns with it, you can really turn the tide of the game easily. And really, in most matchups, just resolving a 5/5 is good right now, you know. Resolving a 5/5 against aggro is great if you can get to turn 5, which the deck is tuned to help you get to, like, way later turns than you're supposed to against aggro. And even in the mid-range matchup, resolving a 5/5, like, really hurts, you know. So just Crested Sunmare is fine on its own merits, but once it's created 15 power for you and 10 of it's indestructible, then you're probably going to win that game in almost any match. Now, we've got room for 9 spells in the deck, and they're all going to be removal spells, you know. Yeah, we get a little bit later in the game because we're gaining life, but we can't just leave huge dudes on the battlefield. That will not do. So we're going to use all of these slots on removal here. And a lot of these are enchantments. Let me show all 3 of them to you at the same time. We're going to play 4 copies of Desert's Hold, 2 copies of Cast Out, and 2 copies of Ixalan's Binding. I've said it before, say it again, Desert's Hold is actually really good and does not get like any credit, but we've got like 11 deserts in this deck, so it's fairly easy to already have a desert out by the time you get a Hold in play, and it just takes out their best threat. And it's really good at 3 mana too, because most decks will play Cast Out or Binding, and that's 4 mana. Being a mana ahead of the curve is great. So I really actually love Desert's Hold, and when it gains us to 3 life, it's incredible in the aggro matchup. So Hold is definitely in. You know, it's on theme, and it's fantastic. As far as Cast Out goes, this is Flash. You know, it's got Flash and it's got Cycling. You know, I want to split Binding and Cast Out here, because I still think that Ixalan's Binding is fantastic and deserves to be in the deck. Binding is a card that a lot of people are kind of coming around to nowadays, and it is fantastic. You know, in this deck, I like to look at it as a life gain card, because if we cast out something, they can just recast their Hazard Red or Scarab God, a different copy of it or something, their Glorybringer, Bristling Hydra, whatever, you know. But with Binding, if we manage to get any of those things, they can never cast it again, which in a way saves us an awful lot of life in the long run. And the last spell in the deck is just a copy of Fumigate. Yes, we're playing a lot of creatures, but we play through our own Fumigate really, really well. You may have noticed that with a few cards I talked about how good they were against sweepers. You know, Sacred Cat has Embalm, Sunscourge's Champion has Eternalize, you know, Aethersphere Harvester is a vehicle and can be crewed super duper easily. Oketra's got Indestructible, makes her own army. You know, we recover from our own sweeper really, really easily. So just playing through our own Fumigate is very, very easy, and just playing until we get to Fumigate and then dropping all the creatures in our hand the next turn is another strategy that sometimes pays off. And Fumigate is just a great panic button against aggro decks just in case, and it's also good in the energy matchup against a bunch of Thopters and Whirler Virtuosos and Rogue Refiners and Longtusk Cubs, and good lord, they play a lot of creatures too. That's a big board against energy, so Fumigate's fantastic in that match too. I will just have one as a panic button in the main deck and then put another one in the board. And here's our lands right here. We're playing 24 of them, and that's kind of a lot. Because we've got Legion's Landing in there too, and it flips relatively easily, so it kind of counts as another land. But we've got to get to, you know, Sunmare as easily as possible. It's a 5-drop, and there's a card on the board that costs an awful lot of mana that we have to get to sometimes too. So I think 24 is right here, and we have to make room for a bunch of deserts, and these are the best deserts we can play right now. You know, Scavenger Grounds gives us a main deck answer to Godfarer's Gift, which we need. We are very bad in combo matchups for the most part, and that's one of them, and we are awful in that match. So we need a main deck answer to it, but we have to play deserts anyway, so hey, there you go. As far as Desert of the Troodos, I actually really like this. I want to spotlight it for a second. You know, late in the game, we can draw dead if we draw a land. It's entirely possible. If we have a Sunmare in play, we often want to draw a card that gains us life, or at least has lifelink, so we can get a horse next turn. But if we draw a dead land when we really want something that can gain us life, that sucks. So this really, really helps filter through cards as fast as possible. And last point here, that Grasping Dunes can be whatever desert you want it to be, honestly. You can play Sunscorched Desert if you want to. You can play Endless Sands if you want. I don't care, but I think the Grasping Dunes was the best. Also, Cradle of the Accursed. There's a few choices, is all I'm saying, but I think I like Grasping Dunes the best. Here's our sideboard right here. We really don't have to shore up the aggro matchup too much, but we do have a couple of, things we can bring in to really make sure we blow them out of the water. There's Authority, the Consuls right there, and Aethersphere Harvester and Fumigate are our big cards against aggro, but we can also bring in the Regal Caracows against aggro instead of the Crested Sunmare because it's just a better 5-drop in that match. Against those combo decks like Godfarer's Gift that we're just not great against, we've got both Crook of Condemnation and Forsake the Worldly to try and do what we can against those decks. As far as the mid-range and energy matches, we've got Catcher the True as a second copy, and Fumigate will also come in against those decks. And also, our super secret tech, Approach of the Second Sun. We can essentially just board into Approach of the Cats if we wanted to. I don't know if you guys have heard of that deck yet, but it's one of the funniest decks this season. Just plays all the cats and also Approach of the Second Sun. So we have the ability to board into that if we absolutely need to. Just Approach can really take mid-range decks by surprise, and we can easily get late enough into the game to where we can cast it twice. Just literally half the deck gains us life. And if we sideboard in a bunch of cards, more than half the deck can gain us life if we really wanted to. So we can get to Approach twice against mid-range pretty easily, actually. Well, I've still got the sideboard up here. I just want to talk very briefly about a couple, very, very briefly, about a couple of cards I tried but didn't like. Oketra's Last Mercy and Access of Mortality. These are just bad cards. I was really excited about Access of Mortality, but again, bad card. That is all. I have a different kitty now. Anyway, these are your power rankings. And don't freak out, but this deck scores a 67, and it's only about $100 on TCG Player. Actually, when I tallied it up, it was a little bit less than $100. So this is actually a really good deal. I can't quite call it budget, but $100 is not a bad deal at all for a deck that I feel is very, very well positioned right now. Again, it just slaughters aggro decks that you come across. It has a really good chance of beating a mid-range deck, and yeah, it's kind of abysmal against combo and control, but luckily I think those are the two least present decks in this meta right this second. And as far as strategy, it's also a fairly simple deck to play. Just play your stuff on curve. It's more or less it. You're trying to get as late into the game as possible so that you can get to Crested Sunmare and start getting value off of it. But even if you don't get to a Crested Sunmare, there's a lot in this deck that can either extend the game or just end the game outright. The deck is capable of some relatively explosive starts with Glorybound Initiate and a couple of 1-drops, So the deck is somewhat versatile and can do a lot of things despite the fact that it's just a monocolored Lifegain deck. Now, if you want to view this deck list all in one place, just click that very first link in the description box. That'll take you over to TCG Player. They help sponsor my content, and they're the only place you can get this deck for $100 online right now. Everywhere else, it's going to be a little bit more, but they've got super good prices. So make sure you click the link in the description and then go from there. And with that, I'm pretty sure that I am tapped out. I hope you like this one, and I hope you try it out. Again, $100 isn't necessarily budget, but you probably already own a great deal of these cards. There's not anything in the deck that even costs like $5 or $6. It's a relatively easy one to put together. So I hope you try it out, because again, I think it actually can do a lot of good stuff in this meta right now. So give it a try, and then do all the YouTube stuff. Like the video if you enjoyed the video, sub if you're new for all of the content, because there's a lot of it coming up. Make sure you hit the bell for the notifications. And you can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, or kick us a buck on Patreon if you feel like it. Only if you feel like it. Don't do it if you don't want to. I'm not going to make you. Just kick me $1 on Patreon at patreon.com/SBMTG, and you can know what decks are coming out the day before they actually come out. Oh my god. Anyway, pretty sure that's it for me, you guys. I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. He's a baby. You're just such a baby, Bobo.